Mud bricks go back 16,000 years. They, 14,000 BC, mud bricks were being used in the Lower Nile. We didn't start firing them until about 5,000 BC. And clay has become probably the most used material around the world and everywhere. I mean, it's one of those materials that's just available everywhere, which in many countries makes it extremely sustainable because it can be made on the spot. Now, this is obviously not brick, this is natural stone, but I think that when we learnt to fire brick, we were able to produce many of the qualities of natural masonry and able to do it in a way that just gave sumptuous texture. I think the way sienna influenced me is that it is such an example of making place out of material that the surfaces are both horizontal and vertical, that the buildings aren't objects. And I've spent most of my architectural career trying to fight against this education of building as object, and that that relationship that you get between the building, the ground, the place, the scale, the enclosure are the things that give us joy. And the reason we go back to places like Siena are because they are those places that do all those things. And they have their crescendos, they have their duomos and their palazzos and their civic buildings. But essentially they're made up of walls and surfaces that define place. Another thing that I always enjoy about brick is its relationship with other materials, and particularly with stone. And I think that that relief can be particularly good. I mean, it can be with concrete as well, but the principle of it is great. So it's no mistake that our industrialists chose brick, and they largely did where stone was less available, to build their buildings. And our industrialists of the 18th and 19th century regarded their buildings as something of real pride. And at Albert Dock in Liverpool was an example, and all those industrial buildings of that time in Liverpool, where, yes, they were functional, but they also were there as demonstration of the strength of the business, as banks might be. But whether you were a shipper or a grain importer or a sugar importer or a tobacco company, you wanted to demonstrate to the outside world that you were a real force in the world. And brick was able to give that muscular quality that these buildings have to do just that. There is a very different relationship between St Pancras Station and the British Library. I think Sandy Wilson had a very tough time when, while it was being built and could only be seen as concrete frame, that Prince Charles had a pop at him. I think at the time he didn't realise it was going to be clad in brick, because he called it a concrete monster or something. But I've got some real affection for that, and I think the greatest mistake would have been to have tried to in any way emulate St Pancras Station other than the use of the material, which it quite gently next to it. I mean, there are many ancient structures that are very simple that were made of brick. The Great Wall of China was made to a large degree from unfired clay, not just of stone. My influences, another one of those strong influences at the time of my education was Mies van der Rohe. And I had a book that was one of my Bibles that I was given before I studied architecture called The Three Masters, which was Corbusier, Van der Rohe, and Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, Van der Rohe we don't really think of as brick architect, but he was. And I like what he had to say. The brick is a different master. How ingenious, a small, handy, usable format for every purpose. What logic there is in the bonding. What spiritedness in the joints. What wealth there is in even the simplest wall surface. But what discipline this material demands. And in recent times, we've had lots of other fashions. And future systems, you wouldn't find future systems using a lot of brick. Somehow they think brick is past. And yet, actually, if you think in real enduring architecture, if you think in true sustainability in the true meaning of the word, then some of these relative gimmicks, which can be exciting, you know, I don't want to do down Selfridges in Birmingham and what it's done as a bit of marketecture, you know, it is marketing Birmingham very well. I can't help but feel that in 100 years' time, that if it's there, it will have only been there because of an extraordinarily complicated repair program that kept it going. And I forget who it was who said it, but I think it was Sir Bernard Fielden, said, there are buildings that you can repair and there's maintenance impossible. He said it more elegantly. But I think an awful lot of us know what he means, that we can repair a brick building. The odd job man can repair a brick building. But a high-tech building is, and even some of the concrete buildings, require a hell of a lot more complicated maintenance. And that is a very strong issue about sustainability. Of course, today, as we sit here, the bricks are piling up. So on top of that little problem that the brick manufacturers have had to live with for a long time of architects somehow thinking that bricks aren't sexy enough, we've now got the problem that I thought I'd just briefly depress you with and then encourage you later on. Bricks, I quite like to think of brick and clay and natural building materials alongside food. I've got a great interest in food, and it's not just beer. I have a restaurant as well. And I always think that good brick is almost, you can almost think of food metaphors for it. It's almost edible, and you get those soft bricks and crunchy bricks and inedible bricks, sweet bricks and sour bricks. I think an awful lot of the problems we've had in architecture, an awful lot of the sort of architectural zoos that we've created is this thing of us all trying to invent something new all the time. I think it was Coco Chanel who said, she said something like invention, I'm fed up with invention. What I want is just to, I want to design something classical. And I think classical, you take the broader term, is absolutely right. I think good design is an incremental thing, and only a genius can make an enormous leap into something better. And and I think brick is one of those materials that helps tie us into the history of architecture. Now, those great architects, de Meurons, have proposed that they were proposing that they extend the Tate Modern, which I think is a brilliant project, with that. Very fortunately, they've seen the light. And if you compare that with this, which is their brick alternative, I think there is no comparison. This, again, is using the transparency of brick. This is a brick screen through which light will come. And they have said, partly in reference to this, that they see brick as the new cool. And I think brick is back when you get architects of that nature seeing brick as their material.